Okay. How do I start this out? This is actually my second attempt. I usually am used to just going live and going with the flow, feeding off of a live audience. It just sometimes feels easier knowing that you're not technically alone. But given the subject matter and the topic at hand, I'm just going to go right off rip off the dome here. A lot of you probably only know me as the moniker of the namesake of the channel, Progressive Patriot. My first name is Eli. A lot of people know that. I don't go through great lengths to hide much about myself. I'll go insofar as saying I've shared too much about myself, and that would make me responsible for, any of the backlash and flack I've gotten from people that I've never met. This here is more inspired by my personal life and something that has kind of felt like the tension has been relinquished. Like I don't have to see the product of this video I'm recording on a daily basis like I did for. I'm trying to calculate. I've never been good with the maths. You'll hear me maybe stutter and say words wrong. I take me for the flaws and for whatever good you can find. I worked for a corporation, big time popular here in Florida. And there was somebody that I met pretty early on, me being who I am, especially in social circumstances, in real life, not what you see here. And I try to be as authentic and sincere as possible at all times, sometimes to my detriment. There was an individual who I'd met, and I was not wholly familiar with who this person was or how they are to this day. Recently I went back to this job, the store, that my ex job. I have two jobs in its place. That's the American way. You need three to replace the one. And I don't want to put the name out there, but she's very much still out on these YouTube streets under a name that has not changed very much. Now, as tempting as it is, even though I've been supported to do a full-on call out, I know in my heart that those of you that know me already know exactly who I'm talking about without me even getting into it. So I'm just gonna go with the namesake Pigeons, okay? Not a far stretch, but I think it's a small mercy given the entirety of this little tale here. So I met Pigeons, and of course at any new job, we all want to be super nice, and I'm the guy that tells a lot of jokes, perhaps inappropriate, especially for a corporate setting. But I always feel pretty good about knowing, what lines not to cross, which is why I've never been fired for saying something crazy in my entire life. So this beginning of meeting this individual, and let me just mention the reason for the title is I did binge watch all before I got to go to my newer job. One of them binge watched Baby Reindeer, and listening to the monologue of this main character, Richard Gadd or Donnie, whichever. I He was like reciting some things that were pretty on point. There's a lot of differences. I don't think that my case is anywhere near as severe, but there were some moments where I had literally there's no way to beautify my feelings and reflection on this matter, this case. Pigeons drove me to the point of insanity. So let me pull it back a little bit. I met Pigeons. She learns that I was in a podcast with one of my best friends, Josh from Stuck in the Middle, currently known as Stuck in the Night or Nothing Funny channel. And immediately, she not only did she attach herself as much as she could to me at the workplace, which was a whole strange thing to deal with for over 3 years. Yes, I spoke to management, but I always fell short of going to HR. And I learned something. I learned that Pigeons wasn't, how do I say this, kind of, to code it a bit. Not 100%. None of us are at 100%, so to speak, in terms of being sharp, witty, tactful, or conveying what we really want to others. And in so learning this, like, she does some great things. This is not to take away from her redeeming qualities. Her, like, there's a good spirit and a good soul in there, but there is absolutely something that is ill, or not ill, yes, ill, and wrong about there's a disconnect. There's clearly a disconnect. For example, she does volunteer for like Special Olympics events, and that's as much I'm going to get into this person's personal life. And I'm trying to paint the picture so that you understand what I mean when I say, not 100%. So add that to a list of reasons why I didn't want to be too aggressive in putting, a line between myself and pigeons, right? But then it kept going on. And this was in the midst of me just getting introduced to podcasting and doing a show with three people. She was always there as at first as a very, very overwhelmingly, almost like in a way that breaks reality, to show support, which is a twisted way to make anybody who is the figure, the topic. I don't want to say I'm a victim by any means, but I was a something, and I couldn't really. Anytime I brought it up on the Stuck in the Middle show, respectively, it was it was a big laugh. But I know in my heart, including my friends there, it didn't take very long for them to get annoyed, because Pigeons would go out of her way to go to every channel that exists on YouTube. Anybody that ever entered the chat, whether they were a fan or not, or just a first timer, they'd go out of their way to attach themselves. This parasocial, is that a term that I'm using correctly? Because it's fairly new to me. They would attach themselves to anybody and everybody that came into contact with anything that I had to do with. So all of a sudden, ducks, pigeons, Freudian slip, edit, pigeons. Oh well, cat's out of the bag, kind of. Not really, make of it what you will. It is what it is. I've had to deal with it for going on 5 years. Let this moment shine. So, pigeons, as we'll keep going with, would tell people that would work with us, because very early on in the Stuck in the Middle days, we met somebody that had their own, like, kind of satellite radio station, their own show, Stuck in the Middle, and I were lucky enough to be shared on this person's stream stuff. And Pigeons would just tell every single person that she worked for us, was partnered with us, represented us, was some shape and part, a part of like an LLC, like, would really, really try to get it through your head that basically we wouldn't exist if she wasn't there. I mean, that's not what she'd ever say, but the way she would talk to people, the way she'd jump up out of nowhere without even you knowing who she is, she'd find you on Facebook, via email, and just say, "Yeah, no, I saw you in the Stuck in the Middle chat, and I just want you to know, me and Eli, we're super close, and I work with Josh, and blah blah blah, so on and so forth." This repetition was something that went on for straight, without a break, 3 years. Even when I would take breaks from YouTube, I would get messages from people, channels, that we'd worked with, or that we'd, in any shape or form, had some sort of a social life with. We would hear from them, "Hey, who's this Pigeons person? And what is all this about?" And I can't tell you how many screenshots I've received over the years, seeing how much ownership this person had taken. And this would always come with a sense of guilt. It was embarrassing. There, I don't. I'm very much not at ease, like, talking about some of the experiences, but I think I mentioned how it drove me to, like, a breaking point. I have left messages on Pigeon's voicemail, screaming at the top of my lungs, breaking the sound barrier. about leaving me alone, that I would go to management, I would go to her family, I would call the cops, all of these things, and even face to face, which never worked, because I'd get the stare, I'd get maybe some of the fear that is natural, but nothing would stick or sink, nothing. I would just get nods and a nervous smile and like okay, and then 2 days later, the behavior just comes back full swing, like a haymaker straight to the face. Like none of the madness that preceded the moment for me to break had even occurred, and everything was just copacetic in her world. In her world. I can't tell you how uncomfortable it made me to learn all of my coworkers would talk about and share with me sometimes how annoyed they were with pigeons talking about me, talking about my personal life, fabricating things that never happened. And I don't know quite how deep that goes, but I've been told that she has called herself my girlfriend. Pigeons went as far as finding my father on the Facebooks. This one, I recall, was one of the first incidents that was the burning red flag. Finding my father's full name, which none of this is hard in the grand scheme of the internets. Baby Reindeer should be a cautionary tale, if anything else. And my father took it as a great compliment that this stranger messaged him and said, "Hey, something, blah, blah, whatever is friendly banter. And then, I just want you to know I am your son's soulmate." I don't know the cringe face to make. So I heard that. I felt like, I don't know, there was some violation of privacy there. I felt like the madness cannot be contained. It's spilling over, and when it hits to a family level, that's when it's all systems go. I made videos in the past from the damn job I worked at with this person, talking about a stalker. You know what she has done in the past? Reported those videos to no avail, to no success. I don't know how many times, maybe four or so, because I didn't talk about it a lot. And I have to also take accountability. When I first met, was it me being as friendly as I was that set the chain of events, or planted this seed? Yes, I invited pigeons into the world that is podcasting on YouTube here, and she made herself very comfortable. Seeing her name and the chats, like she would try to run the chats. She'd go so far as telling people what they can and cannot do, what we thought was cool and was not cool. And none of that ever sat well, especially when we're live trying to be our best selves, essentially performing, reporting, whatever it is we were doing. I was Josh was always diligently trying to stay on cue with the topics. I'm the ranter, I go off script, which allowed me to look at the chat many times over, and seeing that chat spammed with her trying to police everything led kind of a Josh is one of the most free speech people I've ever met, like in person, and he never wanted to block anybody under any circumstances, something that I was not so adverse to, still to this day, even though I've changed quite a bit on the stance. But there became a time where it became too much, and there was a universal agreement between all of us. We just couldn't see it anymore. We wanted to distance ourselves. So we did. And on my, like, I know she watches to this day, on every social media venue, anything where you can go live, I've seen her there. There is no escape. It would always creep me out when I'd go live and there was one view before I even hit the damn button. Trying to describe, events to paint this picture a little better than I'm articulating. After a while, like at work, it would get to a level. She got to a level of comfort aside from standing, where I'm at in the position that I'm paid to be for hours on end, so I can't really do much. And she just stay there and talk. And what's the harm in that, right? Of course, it gets to a point where you're like, come on, I'm at work. I should be working. Please, this has to This has to just stop. Put the kibosh on it. Those were stressful times. And when at some point, I don't know what made her feel so damn comfortable, but I remember when I was on break more than a few times, I'd just feel hands on my shoulder and back, and she'd just rub my back and give me like a cringy shoulder massage. And I'm trying to remember right now if I ever said, just take your hands off me. There, bear in mind, sometimes there was coworkers in the very break room, and I was always worried about the optics. I didn't, I was always in this like duality, this battle, like is what she doing? Is it that wrong? Would people understand? I could tell you right now with 100% positivity. Not only do the people that still work at X job and people that have left the job, I made a post about this, and people that I've worked with years ago have come out in droves to show support about me finally getting away from her. And I can't tell you how positive it's been for my own psychology, my own mental well-being, to not feel whatever that awkward pressure is of knowing you're gonna run into this and that person. I'd hear her, like, when she speaks, she shouts, so you could hear the paragraphs and summaries about yourself. I would go in and I'd say like one hello, and then there'd be a diatribe of dialogue that followed me all the way as I walked away, still shouting. I could be miles away and she'd still be in the background shouting some conversation I never initiated. Um, the embarrassment that followed, aside from the physicality, there was some of the things in conversation where you don't know what really is reality, and what's the truth. But I can tell you this with full certainty: I have been told the following stories about her marital status that I've never asked for. When we first met, she told me she was married to somebody that lived overseas in Hawaii. And then at some point in the story, throughout the months that had passed, this poor man was not alive any longer. So, okay, I mean, none of this was feeding into helping her case of having me or anything. Sure, I know there were times where I was like, yeah, we'll hang out sometime. We'll see a movie. Many times she'd make this whole date scenario and present it to me like it was already planned out. Like, yeah, I got all these comic books, or I got these movies. Come by, watch them. And my agreement in the matter would mean not much, as it wouldn't stop anything. So he was first. She was in a long distance marriage. Then he was a soldier that was expired. I don't remember the details. I think there was an illness involved, and then she was married again, or in a serious relationship, but it was very open and poly. This plays over in my head often. Eli, no, it's totally cool. He's cool with it. It's okay. Trying to coerce me into taking it to the next step. So we got 1, 2, 3. Then there was no boyfriend or husband. Then the cycle would rinse and repeat. And again, there was a husband or long distance someone figure that I'd always never knew, but I was granted the blessing of knowing it would be okay if I wanted to take it to that level with pigeons, that I could go ahead and do so. Imagine those conversations. I know I've told my jokes to everybody. I've told my jokes to her. I don't think I really ever joked about wanting to go that extra mile that she definitely had all premeditated up in the brain space there. This was just a discomfort I kind of learned to live with for a while. But then those moments of bullshit comfort, as I self-describe it, would break. I think I've broken, more times than I can really count. I can't tell you how livid I would get, especially when it came to just podcasting and meeting other people that had their own channels or whatever the case. That pigeons reached out and said that they were, they helped run the show and they do our bookings, this, that, and the other. So I've noticed in my absence, I think the behavior has evolved or perhaps even moved towards other people. People change and habits sometimes not so much. And this part of pigeons, I do not believe has changed as I see or understand it, as I avoid most places that she goes, has attached to other creators or musicians. And I would just caution a warning to anybody: be very careful. You may be, this was not the case with me. At first, I was just like, hey, neat. But that didn't last more than, I don't know, 48 hours. You'll, as somebody trying to get out there, you see all this support. They go out of their way to plug your links everywhere. And there's definitely a time where it does more harm than good. Hell, I learned that trying to plug myself on my own when I stepped away from Stuck in the Middle, let alone be it somebody who was, I'm tiptoeing around the word here, somebody who was stalking me by all intents and purposes here. Like, there's no other way to paint it. I've had a long time, I've had years to think about this experience. I've had people try to convince me to take this to the law, or tell a manager I didn't want this person to lose their job. And I still don't. And, it was me kind of relating to the main character in Baby Reindeer, of these, there's times where it feeds, a low self-esteem, and you're like, wow, somebody sees me in a way that I don't feel seen, or that I don't see myself. And sometimes, very, very rare, but maybe when you're at your lowest, those times come in strong, or just, you may not even be conscious of it, you may not even be aware, but it does something, maybe some serotonin goes to your brain for a millisecond, and that's one part you want to hang on to. There was never a time where I'd be jealous if I saw her speaking with anybody else. It was relief, which is kind of sickening, because that's me wishing what I went through, that I still don't feel I've done justice in spelling it all out very accurately. That's me wishing harm on somebody else, because the level of psychosis, man, if you would have heard my raging voicemails threatening, hell and hell, fury, and fire, and the law, and none of this deterred her. The only thing that ever did justice, which is funny, because when we'd see each other in the physical realm at work, she'd never mention, hey, I don't like those videos you made that uh, you talk about me being a stalker. No, no. She would just report the videos, like I expect perhaps is going to happen with this. So I was not ever physically assaulted. I was, she never manhandled me. She put her hands on me in a way that is not known to be aggressive. I was never in a position that I felt I couldn't fight out of. But I did learn later on to say, I don't want to talk to you at all right now. And I'm pretty sure once I said, get your hands off of me. And I'm not trying to make a larger picture here, but when I looked for a thumbnail here, and I wanted to specify female stalkers, you look around. When you look up a stalker in general, let me show you here real time. So good old YouTube images, stalker. The male figure is all over the place, right? There's a chick looking out for a stalker, It's a hooded man, yada yada yada. I'm not crying sexism or anything, but I think what I'm trying to do is maybe explain the stigma of how it might be hard, or how it's already just not widely accepted that women can in fact take this role of stalker. So you once you specify female stalker, the here we go, female stalker images. Even still, it's hard to get, like, there's no official status quo image of a female stalker, with the exception of maybe the overly possessive girlfriend meme. Here we got single white female, that's appropriate, but otherwise you just got rogue looking women, a feral woman, convicted women. Like, there is, as again, there, I don't know what a status quo stalker female looks like. I've had one way back in the day that was much more crazy and wild than pigeons. She threw herself in the middle of the street in my old neighborhood, which, it's, since you're enclosed in a neighborhood, it's very slow. So I don't know how imminent danger was, but it being after dark, she was throwing a tantrum because I broke up with her. This is a whole story from when I was much younger. She is long gone, and I do mean that literally as well. No, I promise there was no culmination of events that led to that. She apparently fell ill and passed. Sorry to give that information in such a quick, like, from one sentence to the other, but that wasn't how that ended. I got to break up with that girl, and she learned to at least back off after a while. And rest in peace to her. And I'm not gonna sully her name here, although I know I've spoken about that too a few times in my own life. But this is like a different kind. Pigeons wouldn't have these episodes. They would just manifest in a very different way, where to everybody that she runs into, she's this darling, do no wrong sweetheart that just wants the world for you. And while the intent is pure and true, it's the execution, it's the way that she goes about it and sticks with it. Had this lasted like a month or two or 1 year even, I wouldn't still have this in my heart. But when I went to my store the other day, my old store that I don't work for anymore, and saw her, and then the diatribe just began again, and I couldn't even understand half the shit she was saying. I was just quick to, I was saying my hellos and goodbyes to some people, and just hearing all this stuff, like she knows me in a way she never has, telling me things. She went out of her way to find everything she could ever find of me, and learn things that I don't think I've really knowingly shared, about my own personal life. Things from, like, me growing up in New York. Anything I'd ever post anywhere, she'd somehow know. And I never really knew how to fight back. I didn't leave the job because of her, so let me not dramatize the events here. And while I'm disconnected from her, even though she lives way too close for comfort, and has shown me my lives to her family. Apparently, the father loves me, and the mother, because she's seen my negative videos, has told her to stay away from me. I would caution to stick with that advice, especially because I know this is one of the only ways to spurn you away. I never wanted to. I didn't want to do this, but I feel like there's a part of me that grew into feeling like I have to. And now that I no longer work with you, even though you still hang out with a lot of my old friends and or associates, and you attach yourself into their secondary lives, their hustles, their YouTubes, their Discords, and you become a big part of that, and you still utilize, me as somebody that we're still close again in a way that we never were. Speaking out, my voice is been my most effective weapon, even if it's gotten my own ass in trouble. But this is, I hope, and I've said it before, Like, again, I've blocked her on every social media platform, but I've seen so many different handles with the same name. One time I saw, let's say, it's Pigeons was the original name, and then I saw Pigeons for You, and then I'd say, I know it's you, and then she'd be like, how did you figure it out? Well, let me tell you the ways. So let this just be what it is. I hope that you have been trying to, I hate saying it this way, keeping my name out of your mouth. I hope you're focusing more on your own life and not trying to live through others, attaching yourself to others in an unhealthy way. There's still time for you. You still have a whole life ahead of you. You don't need to be using as much energy as you commit to people that clearly don't want to give it back in the way that you intend it to be taken. So now I'm dealing directly with you because I know you watch every single millisecond that I exist on an external platform, because I wouldn't have you in my own home. And you're probably one of the only women that's ever frightened me. That's the first time I think I've said that out loud, maybe. So please, stop using anything I've been a part of in a way that helps you manipulate other people. Don't list myself, or Stuck in the Middle for that matter, on your invisible, fantastical resume so other people accept you. I slipped your name up once. You're not your real name. You know what your little handle. Try to strike this down, and YouTube will not. There's you have no ground and no claim here. Okay, and that's it. I've always had an awkward way with goodbyes, but I think this is enough to get this out of my system. I cannot convey enough how crazy you have driven me throughout these years, and I hope that my exiting the job that we shared begins a real healing point for the both of us. Keep your distance, please. I couldn't be more public about it at this point, and nothing's ever phased you. I don't know what makes me think that this will, but it's the only way I've seen you even respond to me saying, this is not healthy, this is not good, this is not right. It's the only way. So if you ever thought that I led you on to what you have done, I apologize. Although I know it was nowhere near as severe as Baby Reindeer on both fronts, but it's amazing how similar the male mentality is when they feel victimized, and I'm referring to myself as a victim. I don't know what the fuck I am in terms of this scenario, this very strange Twilight Zone-esque scenario, but I was an unwilling participant in something that was no game to you and no game to me. And that's as far as I think I'm going to address this. Don't let little things like these go unsung. Shine them out in the light, and that's that. Live healthy, and have a great day and a great life. Hope that the next live is a little bit more upbeat. Until then.